If I could only figure out how to get my team motivated.
We are never going to get this project done on time.
Oh my God, my payroll numbers are insane. Why are we having all this overtime?
Do you have these or similar employee problems? Do you feel like some of your employees are just there for a paycheck? Tired of recruiting, interviewing, onboarding, and training just to find out you must do it all over again? Then it's time for you to find out how to have outrageously awesome employees. Sit back, buckle up, and get ready because we're about to drop a knowledge bomb on you. Please welcome to the mic the host of the show, the man who puts the human in human resources, the 007 of team building, the emperor of employee engagement, Randy Starr.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Outrageously Awesome Employees. We have a very special guest today, Nicole Williams. Nicole is the Vice President of Human Resources for Harbor Retirement Associates. How are you doing today, Nicole?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Randy, for having me on your show.
Super. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We've been having a lot of fun on these. We just started doing the podcast probably about a month ago and have had some tremendous interviews and some great sharing. So we're looking forward to what you have to tell us today, that's for sure. And we just want to start out by you telling us your history, your background, positions you've held, companies you've worked for, and that type of thing.
Well, I have been in human resources for 22 years now, and I have worked for some global giants in my career. I've had an opportunity to work for General Motors, Tenet Health System, FedEx, Christus Shumpert Health System. I've worked in the banking industry. So human resources has actually given me a lot of experience, not just in one field or industry, but in many industries. And so that's the one benefit about working in human resources is that you're not pigeonholed to just one specific industry. HR is HR no matter what industry you work in.
Yes, that is so true. And not only that, but if you chose to in HR, you could live and work pretty much wherever you wanted to, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My career has taken me to many states. I've worked as a director of human resources in Shreveport, Louisiana. I worked as an HR business partner for FedEx in Michigan. I am currently in Florida, in Vero Beach, Florida, working for my current employer, Harbor Retirement Associates, as vice president. And so throughout my career, it seems that with each position, I have gained more experience as well as climbed that corporate ladder, if you will.
Yes, climbing the ladder is fun. That's for sure. Okay, so you've got tremendous experience, not just in HR, but in multiple industries, which span everything from healthcare to transportation and, and like you said, some very large organizations, banking, healthcare, FedEx, GM, big giant companies. What is it about the HR aspect that's so interesting for you that you've continued in that field?
Well, the beauty of human resources is that people are different. And so no 2 days are ever the same. You never know what you're going to encounter when you're talking and working with employees or what stories you'll hear. Sometimes I'm an advisor, sometimes I'm a coach, sometimes I may be a parent. So it just really depends on the nature of the circumstances.
That is so true. Coach, parent, advisor, friend, a little bit of
Absolutely.
A little bit of everything.
Absolutely. Counselor.
So,
Confidant.
oh, I know, right? And the stories that you do hear, I don't even, there's probably many of them that you couldn't even begin to tell on this. But,
I could write a book.
Yeah, and you should probably. My mother always told me, I was in the hotel industry for so many years, and my mother always told me, you need to write a book, because I'd come home and tell stories about what happened that day or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's It's amazing. And you said people are people earlier. Doesn't matter what industry, people are people, or HR is HR.
Correct.
It's the same thing.
Correct. Yeah, I could have especially right now what's going on in the world with a lot of people claiming sexual harassment claims
Oh,
and
right,
allegation,
right,
and that can happen in no matter what industry. It doesn't have to be in the manufacturing sector. It could be in healthcare. It can be in banking. It can be in transportation.
right.
Those type of things happen no matter where you may work. Those allegations, and so HR is certainly there to investigate and do their due diligence.
Yeah, I would have to think that since this issue that's been obviously going on for a very long time has been focused on so much over the last 6-8 months, it has increased your workload and HR's workload in general tremendously.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
tell us a story about what you would consider one of your greatest accomplishments in human resources.
Well, actually, I believe I've had many of them, but one of the greatest ones that I reflect back on is a time when I joined a health system, and the department was quite large. There was 15 people in the HR department, and I had actually moved there to Louisiana to take this position. And when I joined, my current director of HR, regional director of HR, went off on a FMLA leave, and so she was gone for 12 weeks. And during that interim period, the COO asked me would I step up and lead the team. And I thought, wow, are you serious? I've been here just a short period of time.
Right.
I know no one, and you have that faith in me to lead the team. And she said yes. So needless to say, my boss did not return from her medical leave, and I applied for the position and actually competed with external candidates, but I was awarded the position.
Wow.
I really stepped up to the plate and was able to assert myself in that industry, as well as be able to build a rapport with the team to where they had trust in me. But one of the challenges that I was faced with was that they had actually hired a consultant to come in and analyze the department. And what they wanted was to turn human resources into a transactional department, transformational department, versus it being your old school, if you will, HR department, where it was truly just a personnel department where people picked up their checks.
Right.
There was no really advisory or business type support.
Right.
And so we were able to do that. And how it did that was, one, I think that in order to be a good business partner in human resources, you have to understand the business. I think human resources who are professionals, they need to earn their seat at the table, not just be awarded the seat at the table. And so one of the things that I did was I instilled education in my team. Out of the 15 people that were reporting to me, 10 of them actually went back and got their certification. Some completed degrees.
Wow. That's awesome.
And so it was really, really, so that was a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And we slowly were able to turn that perception of being a personnel department and to truly a HR department that was sought after before things happen, versus a reactive state. They were proactive in reaching out to us and valued our opinion.
That is it sounds like something simple if you don't understand it, but that's a huge transformation. Going from the department that you go to get your applications from and pick up your check from to an actual human resources resource for everyone, and a department that understands. It's not, before it wasn't really much about the business. Before it was just about, like you said, personnel. and now it becomes
Correct.
part of the business. And
Correct.
finding the right talent, training the right talent, maintaining that talent, it's easy to say and it sounds simple, but it's not easy to do. That's for sure. It's a
Oh,
difficult thing to
absolutely
do.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the training aspect for employees. And I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in a minute. But right now, what do you do currently in your current position with Harbor Retirement Associates? What do you do there to help your employees grow? Maybe not just professionally, but in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I just launched a weekly newsletter called the HR Weekly, where I am sending it out because we're in multiple states. And so I don't always have that hands-on touch to each of the people that are rolling up to me.
Right.
But we can certainly communicate via internet, email, phone. But to actually have that personal touch and provide that training and development as well as education, I wanted to do something to where they are feeling more empowered in their role at each of the communities that they're supporting. And so the weekly HR is a toolkit, if you will, that will help them have a reference point to certain things, whether it's on how to handle terminations to avoid legal risk, how to support your executive directors and line level managers when they have concerns about whether they should hire somebody, regulation requirements related to our industry. Each state has different regulatory requirements, and so a reference tool of where to go to find that information.
The legal piece in HR, as I talk to, and I've been, I guess, dealing with human resources professionals at pretty much every level for over the last 20 years. And the legal piece is always a huge concern. You can't control what might happen out in the field. So preventative is always much better than trying to cure something that already happened. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the newsletter is a great idea.
One of the things that I do is I actually count my settlements as wins. Because when, like you said, sometimes when it gets too far down the pipeline, when HR sometimes is the last to know, and when we go back to do the investigation, there was missed opportunities to where we could have corrected a situation. And so when it gets to the point where now we have attorneys involved, you have to look at all the risk and liability associated with an allegation or claim.
Right.
And so if there is some complicity on the employer side, then we need to just settle it, settle the issue.
Right.
It makes no sense in going to court to try to fight something that is a losing battle.
Right. And that's just going to be more expense as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So over your the span of your career, going back to when you first were in human resources, tell us a time or an instance that you've helped an individual, an employee, overcome a challenge.
Well, I can think back to a time when I was working in the transportation industry, and the actual site for this company, I was over multiple sites in the state of Michigan. But this site was actually in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, very remote area, and we were looking for a manager to manage that site. Not a lot of options when you're in a very remote area. This is Amish country.
Oh, right.
We wanted somebody to manage, one of our sites in the transportation industry. And so this was a small site that had maybe 20 employees at this particular site. So somebody from within applied for the position, actually at that site, and we really had no other applicants who were one knew the business or qualified, and so we gave this person an opportunity. But the challenge was that this is somebody who was once a peer to his coworkers, and
Right.
now he is going to be managing them.
Mm.
And so to really help him in that role and transition to that role, it was certainly a challenge because one, he had to be respected as the new manager, and be able to hold people accountable and set aside the friendships that he had built throughout the years as once their peer. The after work socials would have to cease of them
Yes.
going out.
Yes.
So that was a little bit of a challenge, but providing that person the training and development on how to be a successful manager, how to transition from once a peer into a supervisory role, it was actually rewarding, and he was able to do so
Oh,
with
great.
coaching, and yeah, he did a great job.
Yeah, that's good. I actually went through that myself in my hospitality career. I stayed at the same hotel started as a part-time front desk clerk, and I was there and promoted up through a couple of different levels of supervisory positions to the front desk manager at the same place. And of course, this was years and years ago, and I was young, and hospitality's always been a very social environment
Right.
for the employees as well. So, you have lots of friends and you go out at night after work and that type of thing. So it's not an easy transition. So that would have been a great success right there. I can guarantee you.
Absolutely.
And I speak from experience. It was not an easy thing to do because it's tough,
Right.
Your buddies and then all of a sudden your boss. And
Correct.
you don't want to lose the friendship, but you want to gain the respect. And then, of course, there's also the thing that there was probably people that worked with that gentleman that had been there longer than he had.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, and so then you have that challenge of, well, why did he get the job?
Right. Exactly. Okay, so I mentioned earlier I was going to ask you about training. What type of training do you believe is the most important type for your employees?
For human resource employees or employees in general?
Employees in general.
Okay. Well, each position, of course, has its own training module. So, if we're speaking specifically to the industry that I'm in now, the assisted living industry, we have employees that range from our C-suite executives to hospitality employees in the dietary area, to sales, to marketing, to HR. So each position actually has a different sales, or not sales, but training track, if you will, that will help them to grow in each one of their respective roles. However, what's paramount is that I think all employees need to be able to have the same type of training when it comes to our core values and the reasons why we're in this the position that they're in and why we're in this industry, how it relates to our customers or our residents. So everybody has to have that type of training, and I think that comes early on during the onboarding phase. Everything should be tied back to a company's mission, vision, and values of the organization. So that kind of sets the tone for your role, no matter what position you're in.
Right. Exactly. So that type of training that typically happens during orientation, or do you extend that later as well, or how does it occur?
We
in your
do. We
current position?
actually, yes, we it's certainly done at the time of hire,
Okay.
from even the interview phase, asking those questions about and tying it still back to our core values.
Right.
And then it continues on during the onboarding phase. So while I was talking about the different training modules, depending on your career, it still should be tied back to those core values. And actually, I'm working on a leadership training that the company has every year. It's an annual leadership training. And even in that training, our theme is still tied back to our core values. And so while the theme for this year is actually about teamwork and appreciation, each presenter was tasked with how does your presentation tie to teamwork and appreciation, but also how is it tied to our core values, whether it's respect or attentiveness or excellence or integrity or stewardship.
Yeah, the core values. I mean, that's what sets your culture, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So culture is so important, and that's
So very
awesome.
important.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, one of the things that I've learned throughout my career is that while a company sets the culture for the organization, if you are not controlling the climate, which can fluctuate just like your temperature in your home or in your car, if you're not controlling that climate space, then the culture will change. And it can change slowly over time where you may not see it until it's too late. I went to a conference last year where one of the vice presidents of, I can't think of the name of the company, major company that in the baked goods area, where the company now does not exist because the culture eroded the company, and the company was sold off and divested over time to where the brand exists, but the company itself does not exist.
Wow. I have always, when I work with clients who are attempting to, I don't want to say create a culture, but maybe emphasize their culture or grow their culture, or maybe in some cases it's a combination of building their brand and their culture at the same time. I always tell them, I'm like, you may not have a written culture as a document or a living document of any kind, but trust me, you have culture. So you can either control the climate to emphasize the culture that you want, or you can turn your head the other way and you'll get the culture that happens.
Correct.
And a lot of times that might not be what you want.
Correct. Yeah, the company, I just remember it was Sara Lee.
Sara Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge company too.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't exist anymore. Like I said, the brand exists, but not the company.
Well, I used to live in North Carolina, and Sara Lee had a manufacturing plant that was probably about 10 or 15 miles away from where I lived, and I would pass it on occasion when I would play golf at a certain golf course. And this was a very rural area in North Carolina, and that was one of the places that you wanted to work.
Right.
They paid good money, and they had decent benefits, and it was a steady job because they were a big company.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's unfortunate because I do remember that the name on the plant changed. I can't remember when that was.
Company, it went defunct in 2012, I believe.
Yeah, that would fit. Yeah. Okay, Nicole, you've answered this question already, but I'm going to have you re-emphasize it. Tell us about your typical day.
Well, like I said, there is no 2 days that are alike. Um, some days are more challenging than others. Some days are better than others. Um, but the typical day for me is usually I'm checking my emails before I even get to work, to see if there is anything that happened, especially working in a 24/7 type of industry.
Right.
Um, our office does not just stay open from an 8 to 5, but with human resources, you're always on alert and on call. Things could happen throughout the night, so I'm certainly checking my emails to see if there's anything. Um, and then I am um, doing the things that I can to be proactive. So, like I was talking about that HR Weekly newsletter,
Right.
so writing that. And then, of course, then you have your reactive things that you're doing. I'm also involved in hiring and looking for director level and above candidates. We just hired a general counsel for our
Oh,
organization, and so we are certainly busy on the recruitment side as well. I'm also watching our metrics, looking at turnover, looking at retention, um, and then even drilling down to see, is there hot spots in our turnover? We're looking at doing exit interviews, reviewing those, and then working with the team in the community to ensure that we're having that consistent approach and following our policies and best practices across the board.
yes. The answer to that question is always there is no such thing.
Is a typical day, correct?
Not in HR.
No, never.
Yeah. I've got one last question for you, and this is directed towards anybody that might watch or listen to this podcast that is considering a career or a position in human resources. And this is a great question for you because you have so many years of experience and it spans so many different industries. What would you tell someone that would help make their decision as well as help make them successful in an HR career?
Well, this that question is a great question, and the answer actually has changed throughout the years. Years ago, a degree in human resources did not exist because, again, we were called the personnel department. And so it was truly an administrative function. It was not that business partner function. It didn't require someone to have a in-depth knowledge of employee relations or labor relations. And so it has changed over the years. And so today, somebody wanting to get into human resources, I would say definitely go to school, get a degree in human resources. Also, the certifications by HRCI or either SHRM provide a very, very in-depth knowledge of the field. Then there's also, if you want to go into a specific niche of human resources, whether it be compensation or benefits or labor relations, there are certifications and training that you can get also just for those specific areas of HR. So it depends on what your passion is. I'm not a person who enjoys doing benefits, so that was never something that I wanted to go into. I don't like the aspects of governing, or watching over the 401k or the benefit aspects. But of course, it's a part of my position. But for me to be a benefits analyst and just have that be my career track, that was never what I desired to do. I love compensation though, and so I've thought about actually going back to get a CCP certification. So it just depends on what your niche is.
That's some awesome advice. Nicole, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. We know that you're extremely busy. So thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us and give us some, what I would call some really good golden nuggets and tips in many different areas. This concludes the interview. Is there anything that you would like to add before we say goodbye to everybody?
I would welcome anybody and everybody to the area of human resources. It's certainly a rewarding career. It's a fun career. And as the baby boomers and retire, we certainly need the millennials to come on board and continue really enriching the field of human resources.
That is so true. We do need some, as we used to say, fresh blood in the game, huh? That's that's awesome.
Right.
Okay, well, that's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for watching, guys, and be sure to go on the bottom of this page right about here, I think is where it's going to be, and subscribe so you'll get an email and let you know when the next episode is produced. Thanks. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Please feel free to contact Randy with any questions about team building or employee engagement issues. Subscribe to this channel so you'll be notified when new episodes are published.